Greetings and welcome back to Switched to Linux. Today we're going to be talking about the end of Windows 7. It is less than a year before Windows 7 support is going to die and you will want to switch to something. And the question is, what are you going to switch to? Are you going to switch to Windows 10 and become a sheeple? No. I mean, there's legitimate reasons you need to switch to Windows 10, for sure. But if you do not have one of those very legitimate reasons, definitely consider Linux as a good operating system. Now, our kind of launching point for discussing this is kind of funny. Windows 7 will have 3 years of extended support, and they're going to double the price each year. So, I think on the basic Windows Enterprise plans will start at $25 per device, and it's going to be $50 per device and $100 per device. Man, somebody just said it. Just let them keep doubling until someone doesn't pay anymore. By the time somebody keeps going, whatever. Another version of Windows 7 is going to start. So Windows 7 Pro is going to start $50 per device, then $100, then $200. And so they're basically trying to push people off. There's my deepen notification. Yep. The desktop is going to the Windows 7 is dying, and it's a pretty old operating system. I love Windows 7. It's probably going to go down in history as one of the best Windows operating systems for sure. I just don't see Windows getting any better from this point out. They laid off their QA team. They're focusing on data collection and pushing ads and all sorts of other stuff that we don't want in an operating system. It's bad enough to go on the internet, but I'd like to have an ad-free zone if I can possibly do it on my computer. And so, but Windows 7 is dying. And I don't have a problem with them pushing people off of Windows 7. But the problem is that there are legitimate concerns. Very, very legitimate concerns. So, for example, in the pharmaceutical industry, like I did work in a cancer lab, and we just end up paying. This is right before Vista came out. We paid like $20,000 for a real-time PCR machine, and the software on that only ran on Windows XP. Wouldn't work on Vista. Wouldn't work on 7. Only ran on Windows XP. Well, that's the type of scientific stuff we deal with. You're talking about a pharmaceutical company. They have to make sure their software is completely compatible. It has to be certified. It has to be absolutely certified to be right, because if it's wrong, people die. So you have to make sure everything works. And, a couple years notice isn't necessarily enough. Now, these companies all knew the end of Windows was coming, but they only had 3 years to write new software and get them certified. These are legitimate causes. Now, I remember almost legitimate. It's not exactly the same. It's the best personal analogy I could come up with. But when I was a professor, and I was a chemistry professor, there's this little application called ChemDraw that allows you to draw your chemical equations. I'm teaching organic chemistry. I need ChemDraw. The school would not buy it for me. I had to go out of my own pocket to buy a software package that should be absolutely required for my job as a chemist. They would not approve the $100 sale. And the point I'm trying to make here is that just because Windows 10 is out doesn't mean the CEO has approved you buying new software. They might just patch it. Just throw an antivirus on it. All these things that really aren't legit. As an IT guy, you look at it and you go, what are you smoking? There's legitimate reasons why people are still on Windows 7. That's the point. But the security is going to become an issue. And so what I'm going to tell you here today is that for most people, you don't have to switch to Windows 10. You can switch to Linux. Now, there are some use case scenarios where you can't just switch to Linux. I fully get that, and I fully understand that. But the vastest majority, we're talking that's probably less than 1% out there. Okay, very specific application needs, in which case you can't switch to Windows 10 either. You might be an avid gamer. Keep a Windows box laying around for your video games to use Linux for everything else. Then there might be some other software packages depending on what you're doing. But for the rest of the people, you want to consider a switch to Linux. I personally like Linux Mint for all my production. I use another computer over here. I have enough computers. I have one computer dedicated to always changing the operating system every few weeks so that I keep up to date, learn how to use new systems. Like I just finished a 2 or 3 week stretch on Arch. I loved it. Arch is awesome. Linux Mint is still for me. That's what I'm keeping all my production at. But there's some great benefits to using Arch. And, so I'm always learning those things by experimenting with new versions on one computer while keeping my production computers the same. But the reality is you don't want to wait until you don't want to get up to that line where Windows 7 support ends and then just dump it and try and install Linux. You're going to frustrate yourself. You need some time. You have a year. This is a year calendar, a year clock that you should take the time and learn how to migrate yourself into Linux. So here's ZDNet article, how to replace Windows 7 with Linux Mint. We're going to dig through this. Of course, I have a playlist. I'll have it carded in the video. It'll be in the description down below. I did a 6-video playlist on how to switch to Linux. So this is going to be kind of a summarized version of all those videos. So with Windows 7 dying, they're, of course, also recommending Linux Mint. And the reason so many people recommend Linux Mint is because it's very stable. Updates, if ever, kill the thing. Rarely, if ever, kill the thing. Whereas, Manjaro, it has a reputation of updates sometimes killing it. I love Manjaro, and I've never experienced that. I think Manjaro is also very stable as well. But I've been running Linux Mint consistently on computers for a few years straight with, upgrading, updating, never had any issues whatsoever. Linux Mint kind of has that reputation. There are a lot of other ones, OpenSUSE, Manjaro, Debian, Fedora they're talking about. But the thing about Linux Mint is it has a default Windows layout setup that's going to be most comfortable for Windows users to switch to. And with the most recent 19.1, it now even mirrors how the Windows 10 interface sort of looks. And so we have that kind of approach going as well. Now, what they don't really talk about here, this is just how to set it up, how to install it. All this is fine. But if you just walk through this and you replace your Windows partition, it's going to frustrate you. So what I'm going to tell you to want to do is you want to get in there and experiment with some things. So what I always tell people to do is you first want to ask yourself and get a list of the things you need to accomplish on your computer. Do you need to do things like, are you a hobby writer? I'm a writer. I'm a published author. And this book is entirely written and produced, cover designs, interior designs, everything is all on free open source FOSS software. So do you need to edit images or graphics? Okay, the question isn't, will this run Photoshop? The question is, can I edit my graphics on Linux? So I did all this book cover in GIMP. So, this is a good book cover. Very good book cover. There's the front. Here's the back. Okay? Very good book cover. ISBNs are in there. Everything's just fine on that. No problems at all. All of that was done on GIMP. There is another application very much like Photoshop as well, and that's called Krita. So you have 2 really good software packages. One's called GIMP, one's called Krita. If you need to do vector graphics, things like that, don't ask, can Illustrator run? There's an application called Inkscape, which is every bit as good as Illustrator. I think the only thing it doesn't support that Illustrator does right now that I know of is multiple different canvases. That is a perk of Illustrator, but is that a perk enough to say, oh, I can't use it? No, I'd rather just have free and open source software and have a separate file for each canvas layer. That's me. Do you need to do Office documents? Do you need to do databasing? What types of things do you need to accomplish? These are those questions that you ask when you are doing this, and then you seek out to find it, because most of these things, Krita, GIMP, LibreOffice, all these things that I'm using, there are Windows versions. So what you're doing is you're spending this year in preparation and you're installing these software packages on Windows and you're taking the time to learn how to use them. I had one guy leave a comment on a video. It's like, yeah, but GIMP is so slow and inefficient. Well, if you're an expert in Photoshop and you've never looked at GIMP, yeah, it's slow and inefficient. Okay, so this channel, Switch to Linux, this isn't a typical Linux channel where we get into all of the geeky nuances of all of the things that Linux can do. The entire purpose of this channel, what sets this channel apart, is that I'm looking at how can I accomplish real world things with Linux. I still run a Windows computer behind me, because it hasn't died yet. It's on Windows 7 and there's still support updates. Okay, when that's done, this computer is probably gone. So this is probably going to be the last year I spend any time on Windows at all. But what I've done is I've taken the time to ease into it so I don't interrupt my workflow as a web developer, but I learn how to do all of the different nuancy things on Linux. So as soon as that computer dies or the upgrade cycle ends, boom, replace it, move to Linux, and I haven't skipped a beat because I've already learned all of the software packages I need to use on that system. You don't want to jump into it immediately. You want to start slow. You want to figure out the tasks you need to accomplish. You need to examine it. If there are software that you need to do, so audio stuff, of course I have audiobooks for these as well, all produced on Linux. Kid 3 is an amazing audio tagger. I don't think there's a Windows version of that, but I don't think there needs to be. It's very simple to use. Audacity has a Windows version and a Linux version. I use Audacity to do my audiobooks. And so, including all of the packages and plugins, I need to test my books for ACX to make sure that they're on Audible. So these are all things that you have to ask yourself. Figure out the tasks you need your computer to do, and then ask yourself the questions, do some research, watch some videos about how to do those specific tasks with open source software. Where you can, install that software on your existing Windows machine, learn how to use it so that when the time comes you need to drop Windows and move over to Linux, you haven't skipped a beat. You're not frustrated trying to figure out a new package. You already have learned how to use it. You will not miss anything. So look for all those. You might think about learning a new workflow. For me, one of the biggest reasons I work with this other PC and change the desktops around all the time is because I want to see, I know the workflow I like, but I want to know, can I do better with those workflows? Can I do better? That's the question I'm always asking myself. Can I do better? And so you might think about learning a new workflow. You might just want to say, I like my workflow, I don't want to change it. And the great news for you is that there's systems for Linux, in Linux for Windows users and for Mac users. So you can pick your desktop environment. So I just have a few different screenshots of a couple desktop environments. So this one is Deepin. What I like about Deepin is it has a and this is a desktop environment. I don't personally recommend the Deepin OS, but I'm currently running the Deepin desktop on top of Arch, and it works great. Deepin has the advantage that it has like a Mac type layout and it has a Windows type layout, so you can set it up either way. It is definitely one of the flashiest, most polished looking desktops. There are a few little bugs with it that I don't like, but for the most part, this is a good system. Of course, you can see it back here in the Skype preview. Yes, your Skype will work on Linux. This one here is Mate. So Mate is another desktop very much like Windows. A lot of these are going to be very much like Windows. We have our basic launcher bars, a panel down at the bottom. Now this one has a panel at the top and the bottom. That's customizable. You can have panels at the top and the bottom. You can have them just on the bottom, just on the top, however you want it. This is the great thing about Linux. You can set up the desktop exactly the way you want it. Of course, this is kind of showing you the application menus, things like that. This one is Ubuntu. So this one is the new Ubuntu, which is based on the GNOME desktop. So this is what it would look like here. Here's kind of menus here, and you have the kind of sidebar is what's characteristic of Ubuntu, and these kind of gradienty, orangey type, orangey purpley type wallpapers is kind of the characteristic of Ubuntu. Of course, they have a multitask switcher view. You have various desktops over here. You have a quick launch application bar here, and then this will actually show all the windows that are currently open on this particular desktop. There's only one right here. Then you can do a search, and you can set and customize the search. Do you want this to search just for applications? Do you want it to search just for files? Do you want it to search your app store to look for something? Then, of course, GNOME is GNOME, or GNOME as it's sometimes called, is a build very much like a Mac. At least it can be set up very much like a Mac. It has one simple streamlined panel at the top. It generally does not by default have a dock at the bottom, but it's very easy to add a dock on the bottom. This, of course, is what the task screen looks like. So if you're used to a Mac, this interface might be a little bit more familiar to you. So there are options that you can have. You can pick something that's just like what you currently have, or you can go ahead and keep using, something new. Just experiment around. So I'm going to show you a little bit about my desktop here. And so here's what my desktop looks like. Like I said, I really like not just the Windows interface, but I like the classic Windows interface. Some people say it looks old. It doesn't look old to me. What it is to me is it's functional. And the reason is, down here in the bottom right of the panel, I actually have the Show Desktop icon. Just like Windows, I can throw the mouse on the bottom of the screen, click this button, everything minimizes. I can now work off the desktop. All right. I have all my list of tasks here, which I can reorder these any way I want, independent of the application. That's a benefit that I really like that I wish Windows had. We do have these pop-ups. You can edit these, as particularly on the new version. I'm running the older version of Cinnamon still. The newer version is more laid out like Windows 10. You can set it up like this as well. I have a video about that. All right, and then these are all launchers. So these are different than the current way that Windows 10 has pinning to the taskbar, where you click it and it launches the application. You click it again and it minimizes the application. I do not like that function. Every time I click one of these, a single time, I want a new instance of that window to open. This is exactly how I have it set. Of course, I have my application menu here. Looks like this. I can search for applications. I think I can set the search bar to search files and stuff too. I generally turn that off. So you can organize your files into groups here like this. You can customize this menu if you want things to be in a different order. You can customize it if you want to. So you can have all of those settings there. And of course, one of the greatest things is the software. You are going to have the best software experience on Linux. So this is when you're talking about having software on a computer. On Windows, you generally have to download things. Also, if you are reinstalling Windows the first time, it can literally be a multi-day process to get everything running. On Linux, it takes about 20 minutes to install this distro, and then it takes about another 15 minutes to, maybe not even that, maybe 5 minutes to install all the software you need. Drop your files back in, and you are back up and running. So if this system were to die and crash on me, I can literally throw in a USB drive that just has an ISO image, boot into that, move the files from my server that I need to work on it with, and I can actually get my work done without even installing it. I mean, that's the power of Linux. But the software is one of the greatest things. So all of these software in here are basically they're all curated by the operating system developers. So these are just kind of some things that they're recommending. Of course, if you are looking for specific applications, we have, like here's a password manager. HTOP is a system manager. So you can hunt through here and find the various things that you want and that you need. So there are some games in there, internet things. You're going to find web browsers, mail clients, FTP servers. Bluefish is what I use for web development. This is not a web development computer. That's why it's not on here. Evolution is just like the old school Outlook, which is exactly what I want. It literally is a complete replacement for everything I do in Outlook on Windows. I've used that. Of course, you also have Thunderbird on here, which is installed by default. I've taken out because, hey, this isn't a computer that I do things like that on. There are dozens of web browsers. So if I want to do something like look for web browsers, Firefox, Chromium are the ones I have on here. I also have WaterFox. Midori's another one. Lynx, Epiphany. These are all browsers. To install one of these guys, just kind of click on it, click the install. It'll ask you for a password before you install something the first time, and it's going to install. Now, there are other ways to install software packages as well. Linux Mint features what are called flat packs. I'm not a huge fan of flat packs, but they do have their use. So this is where you're going to find some of your more closed source softwares or some of the more recent versions. So Discord, OBS, GIMP. You'll notice a lot of these I already have installed, but they're not installed here. That's because I don't actually like Flatpaks, and so I don't use Flatpak versions of things. But you can, and they generally work well. So these are all things like the one thing that I might use a Flatpak on any given system is Skype. because not a lot of distros have Skype in them, and so having a flat pack of it is a good thing. In fact, that's how I'm running it on my Arch system right now. So you can add and remove software very easily. You can set it up any way that you want. You have the ability to do all of these things very well. So then all you need to do is start doing some testing. There are a few ways to do some testing. Let's go ahead and go back to this. Actually, let's go ahead and get rid of me up there in the corner. If you have a big enough system, now this computer here is built for live streaming and distro testing, and so it's a beefy system. So you can actually use Virtualbox and test out distributions. So this is going to be the next one that I test on my one system. This one is called Calculate Linux, and this one is certainly a little bit more advanced one. It's running the KDE desktop, or the Plasma desktop. KDE is kind of where it came from. The new version is called Plasma. So this is a Gen 2 build, which is, by the way, the same type of the same exact operating system effectively on a Chromebook. So we'll go ahead and boot into this. I'll show you what this one looks like here. So this is a very good way to test it. In fact, this is when I need to do Windows things now for people. This is how I do it. I have one of these built for Windows 10. So if a client needs something in Windows, I can actually boot myself right on into Windows and do everything testing here. So if your computer is a large, beefy computer, then you can do something like this and test everything out in a virtual machine. So this one here features this. Oh, I think Serge is still on. I apologize, man. I still don't remember exactly how to pronounce your name there. You asked about what version of Evolution I have installed. Let's see if I can get anything in there. Next, skip lookup. Oh, come on. Oh, do you have to get something set up? I don't want to set something up. All right, I'm not going to be able to tell you exactly what version of Evolution I have on there without actually creating an email account. I was hoping I could just drop in there and look at the version. But anyway, Evolution is working. I have the full suite of LibreOffice, which is what I'm using to produce my books, are working. Here's GIMP is working. So this system here did take me a little bit of time to set up. I'm going to be doing a video tomorrow about how I actually got everything working. But this is a great way to test distributions in a virtual machine if you have the ability to do that. The other way is these will run, you can actually run them off of flash drives. These flash drives are actually full installations of Linux. You can also just burn an ISO and use what's called a live key. Just simply download the thing. I have a pile of these downloaded. If I go to my downloads here, I have all of these ISO images downloaded. These are all just different Linux distributions, and put them onto a flash drive, and that's all you need to either test it or to install it, whichever you need to do. So there's a lot of things that you can do to switch to Linux as Windows 10 starts phasing out, or excuse me, as Windows 7 starts phasing out, but start looking now. You do not want to wait until it runs out, until it's an emergency, because you're going to frustrate yourself. Take the time and learn how to do all these different things so that when the time comes to drop your Windows 7 machine, you already have your smooth sailing path to jump into your Linux machine. So let me know the questions that you have in the comments down below. Thank you for making it to the end of this Switch to Linux video. You can have a look at another video right on over here. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel or to Think Life Media, which is my own personal support page. Thank you for watching, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.